All right. Well, good afternoon, good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world. Thank you for joining to the final session of RDI Worldwide's People Matters Virtual HR Conference. My name is Gordon Dudley, CEO of RDI Worldwide, and I'm very happy to be moderating this final session. Thank you to everybody who has joined this session. If you have been here since the first session right after lunch, we truly appreciate you for joining across every session. We need to sort out some kind of special prize or medal for you to have been in every session. For anybody else just joining this session for the first time, also a very warm welcome. You are here for our final session of the conference, which is a global HR open Q&A. And so for this session, we are going to be very much welcoming your questions about all kinds of topics of global HR, whether they are personal to you, to your company, to you as an HR manager, or under any kind of topic that is currently on your mind. So the questions can be put in the Q&A. Please do click the Q&A so that you can enter in your questions, and then we will be able to see them and answer them as we go through the session. So a little bit about our special guest. The person who will be joining me on this session is Christel Adamou, and she is currently the first director of the Office of Professional Conduct at the Asian Development Bank. She is located in Paris, France. You can probably tell that from her virtual background, giving a geographical key sign there. The Asian Development Bank is, of course, headquartered in Manila, Philippines, and so we will have a lot to be able to discuss about her role with that organization. Prior to joining the ADB, she was head of human resources at the Global Green Growth Institute here in Seoul, in Korea. Prior to that, she was also the Chief Human Resources Officer with UN peacekeeping forces across many different countries around the world. So with a career that has taken her to almost every corner of the world, she is very well placed through her diverse experience to talk to us about global HR management. Thank you, Christel, for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, Gordon. I'm really pleased to be here today. I hope we'll have a very interesting session. It's always a pleasure working with you and talking about HR issues. So I look forward to all the questions today.
Great. So just to get everybody in the mood and everybody warmed up, we're going to start with a quick poll. We would like to hear from the attendees on this session. Where are you located in the world? So if you see the pop-up survey, just click which region of the world that you are located in, and we'll take a quick poll to understand where you guys are coming from. We have been having people taking part in the conference from different countries in the world. You know, we are based in Korea. The previous speaker in the session was in the UK. Christel, our guest speaker for this session, is in France, and I know that other countries have also been participating. So please take part in that survey, and we'll see. It's an easy question, right? We don't have to be shy to answer this particular question. It will be anonymous, and let's see where everybody is located. And the poll is closed, and so we are divided between two areas. Asia Pacific 67% and Europe 33%. So it looks like we're covering two time zones. within APAC and Europe. So thank you again for everybody to join and for answering that particular question. So Christel, maybe it would be good as a first kind of question for you to just maybe outline a little bit about your role as it is currently at ADB, and tell us a little bit about that to give us some kind of background.
Thanks, Gordon. So I joined ADB last year to set up this Office of Professional Conduct. And it is an office that reports directly to the president of ADB. We are independent. We are within the organization, but we are independent in our activities. And our main mission is to promote a professional and positive workplace for all staff at headquarters, but also in our 31 field offices. And what it means to promote a positive and professional workplace means to advance awareness on the code of conduct, help our staff and managers make the right decisions as to how to behave in the organization, amongst peers, but also with clients and other affiliated members of ADB. And the positive workplace means promoting that culture that enables people to perform better, to attract talents, to retain the right talents. So we are an enabler and an advisor for staff and managers in that respect.
Okay, well, that's really interesting, because the second session of this global conference that we had earlier was with a guest from Coupang, Korea's hot tech startup. And as an HR director, he was telling us very much about their process when it comes to hiring and attracting the best talents in regards to their values. And so it seems that that is kind of integral part of what you're doing, is trying to kind of bring that and embed that into the organization. Was it something that was kind of, I mean, you said you're setting up this office, so this is obviously something that is new for ADB. Was it a case of a dire need situation that was really lacking, that required it, or is this ADB almost being a kind of leader, and advancing the frontier to try to be a kind of best practice type of organization when it comes to this area?
Well, indeed, there is an observation based on a wide consultative process with staff and managers that there is a need to look at how we resolve issues in ADB based on a code of conduct, but also the workplace concern resolution that needed more emphasis on how people are empowered in dealing with day-to-day complexities, working together, or how to deal with clients outside. Instead of focusing on pure compliance, such as investigation and disciplinary measures. So there was really this need to have a proper independent office that covers ethics, compliance to a certain extent, but also workplace disputes and how to promote that positive workplace and being proactive in helping people to deal with those issues. So that was really a need. But I think also ADB is at this crossroad for change in the culture of the organization, and having that office means aligning with best practices alongside other international organizations and also best practices in the private sector. More and more you see that kind of offices being set up at the governance level.
Okay, and what kind of scale are we talking about? What's the size of the team that you're in the process of setting up, and how many countries is it covering? What's the type of the scope of this new development?
So this office is actually rather small. I call it almost a boutique office. We are 4 staff, and we are probably growing in the future, but at this point, our strategy is not to grow as a team, but rather enable the work of others. It's about influence, leadership by influence, making sure that the organization is effective in how it deals with people issues, and also working together in a coordinated manner into our messages, our training, and other activities. So it's not necessarily the size of the team, of the office that matters, it's how we actually leverage the work of other departments, other offices, managers, and staff themselves, because the main focus now is to say, you have an individual responsibility to promote a positive and professional workplace. And if you are a manager, you have extra duty to promote that environment and handle employee complaints. So we are supporting that project. We are not dealing that for them. It's more about enabling others. Now, the scope is quite wide. ADB has, on average, 3,500 staff members, many more consultants and contractors in the Philippines, and also the 31 offices throughout Asia and the Pacific, including some regional offices in North America and Europe. So the scope is wide. And that's why it's very important that actually people take this issue of behaving ethically, professionally, at the heart of their day-to-day work. What we say, the code of conduct is who we are every day. And that's what it matters in the end.
Yeah, I really kind of can appreciate that the need for that within organizations, and it's almost surprising still that so many organizations, global organizations, multinational, all around the world, you know, household names to almost everybody, are often still lacking in these kind of areas. And I think what you said there in terms of the code of conduct is, you know, it is exactly when no one's looking, how are you acting, right? And so you know, there's some great cases of you know, CCTV monitoring, which have on the one hand have somebody who is like the employee representative for everybody, and then at the same time they are the one who is doing misdemeanors within the company, and so that kind of authenticity throughout the organization when it comes to ethics, I think is really really important. Do you feel that there is a significant difference between the public and private sector in terms of the level of compliance awareness or the need for this kind of thing?
Well, I mean, I think I can speak of the public sector being also the international public sector. So we are an intergovernmental organization, and for ADB and other organizations, it's becoming more and more important to have those sort of mechanism in place, especially to work with government partners, such as particularly some countries like in Europe, the Dutch, the UK, the donors would require organizations to have those mechanisms in place to be able to lead projects and making sure that there's some child protection and there's no sexual harassment on the site. So the organizations have to more and more from the public sector comply with what governments require. And then this is where I see the impact on the private sector, because the private sector has to follow some regulation at the national level. So the more government takes those measures in place and put those regulations in motion, the more the private sector and private companies also have to align and put those things. And I think that's for the better indeed, especially in a very disrupted world.
Absolutely, and the Korea case, I think, is an absolutely textbook case of what you just mentioned. The anti-graft law, which came in, the gift giving regulations came in, were applied firstly and most stringently to the government sector, and then have since filtered into the private sector to help regulate that. So it's definitely a very kind of interesting perspective. And then from that kind of broad overview, then let's bring it to the here and now. is it something also that is higher on the agenda globally because of the global pandemic and the current situation that we find ourselves in?
Well, certainly the COVID-19 has been a disruptor and has accelerated the need for mechanism and more policies so that companies can avoid some sort of major ethical lapses or fraud or scandals. So it has accelerated, but generally speaking, it is my view as well that there's more and more evidence that having those sort of mechanism is good for the business, is good for employee, is good for performance, and is good for the reputation of the company. And in that, you go into a virtual circle where you can do business with more companies that are aligned with values, with code of conduct, with processes, and it's actually made a business case for a better organization or a better company. So more and more companies are going that way. It's no longer just a compliance issue, but it is an added value to our company or to our business, and the way we attract people, the way they work together, and the way they deliver. And so that's what I've observed around recently, and COVID-19 has actually accelerated that observation.
Got it. We were talking earlier about the impacts of COVID, and it brings us to this kind of situation, which was a famous tweet that came out last year in terms of one of the changes of companies, which is who led the digital transformation of the company. Would it be a CEO, as expected, the primary leader, or since it's digital transformation, it's related to technology, it perhaps also could be the CTO, whereas actually, in fact, like you said, this acceleration has actually been purely due to COVID-19. And so I think that's, we find a lot of impacts from COVID-19, digital transformation being one of them, which then, if we kind of bring it back to the kind of HR, then would you perceive that there's been a lot of disruption, that's a fact, positive and negative. Where do you kind of see the balance? Do you feel that in some this has actually had a positive effect for HR management globally, or in some a negative?
Well, I could talk about it for a day. I'm sure there's so much to say, but I think generally speaking, I personally see it as a very positive experience in a way, because as much as it was very hard, it has pushed people to take on more leadership, either from the HR function to the managers and leaders, in the way they actually address and work with people. There's no more status quo. It was time to reinvent yourself and reinvent the policies and really try to listen to people, how they're actually going through this pandemic, both on the professional and the personal side. So I felt that this situation has actually created more empathy, more appreciation, and more of a situation where people start to challenge status quo, which is good. I think it's just really good. And you only had somehow, unfortunately, that kind of major pandemic to trigger that sort of sense of urgency to look at issues. So that would be one. I think also people, before COVID, there's a lot of issues around how we work together, flexi work, being able to take global assignments is not necessarily always needed because of technology today. And that COVID-19 situation has actually helped to help people think about their policies. Is my flexi work policy appropriate? Maybe it has always been there, but nobody uses it because no one dares to actually ask the manager. And the COVID-19, at least for ADB, we have actually been exceptionally delivering beyond even our work plan or our targets for 2020. And that is also because people were motivated, obviously, in a resilience mode, but it has shown to managers that you can be at home and still deliver exceptionally well. So that sort of evidence is now here. And I think it will help many companies to sort of think about how they will implement some flexi work, or how they hire people. Do they actually need to travel to Korea to do maybe some specific work? Can they be hired from anywhere else?
To have a virtual HR conference, you know.
Exactly. Does HR needs to be at headquarters every day? Maybe not. So it's going to just blow up the way we think and we work. And I think that's been welcome, because from what I understand before that, it was tough for people to commute every day, to be at work every day. And especially for the younger generation who may not want to be at work every day, they have also side gigs or other activities. It's going to be really good. On the negative side, I definitely think that, of course, mental health is an issue. And to the extent of some organizations are really being proactive on it, but some others are not. And how do you take care of your people? And also, how do you help them return to work physically in the future? So that may be the most negative thing. It has already also changed the way people behave and some psychological impact on employees.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the mental health one is still yet to really be evident, right? This is perhaps a ticking time bomb that we don't yet know these impacts. You know, this is something that has accumulated over the last year, and regardless of returning back to work or not, you know, there are these ongoing impacts. I think, from my perspective, I think generally my feeling, being in a business which is exposed to many industries, is that across the board there was a kind of freeze status for most of last year, the calendar year. And I feel that there's kind of lag time from companies in their reaction. Wait and see, how long is this going to last? Is this going to be you know, a couple of months and we'll be over it, or is this becoming you know more and more of a truly global serious issue? And then by the time we got to the end of the calendar year, end of 2020, that had already been essentially, you know, 7-8 months worth of full global pandemic. And then there was definitely a sense, even though nothing changed from December 31st to January 1st, coming into the new year, there was definitely a sense of, we need to move forward. We need to start doing something within the confines of what we can do. And even though in some industries which were really heavily hit, there was still an intention, a desire, a bit of traction towards doing something. And so that I think was positive, that companies realized, you know, this is not going away, and therefore we have to adapt to this this current situation, and continue on as a future. And of course, the more adaptable companies, and arguably there are, of course, some companies, organizations are inherently more able to adapt if they are companies born out of the digital native economy, then you know that obviously makes it easier for them to adapt. Other companies, more traditional, with, for example, manufacturing, could be you know, harder for them to be able to change the physical status of being able to do their operations. It looks like we have been briefly left by Christel. I hope that it's just very momentary, and perhaps we can use the opportunity to go to our next poll. So under the current circumstances, we're going to ask you, how much do you work from home? So if you can go ahead and let us know on a current basis how much you are working from home, and answer that question, whether it's 1 day per week, 2 or 3 days per week, 4 or 5 days a week, or always permanent basis. Let us know about that, and we'll see what the current status is. Welcome back, Christel.
Thank you. This is one of those negative things about working from remotely. My computer just shut down. It's crazy.
Another topic for discussion: should, is it now the company's responsibility to provide yes. the infrastructure to do this kind of thing? So that is definitely a topic. We decided just to open the poll, yes. just to find out people. And it's very interesting here. We see the results show that, well, the overwhelming majority are in a 4 to 5 day week or always status. So it seems that, that might be, of course, the country that you are currently based in, that might be mandatory, not an option. But I think, it's important to remember that that is one of the, when we talk about positives and negatives of COVID-19, then that is clearly where there are some very kind of divisive effects. And for those people who, were, shift workers, manual laborers or service-based, customer-facing employees whose business was simply shut down and they had no way to work, either for a number of months or even still, that impact, of course, is far greater than a knowledge worker who is able to just pick up their laptop from their office, go home to their place where they have plenty of space, plenty of internet connection, and can comfortably work at home. And of course, this is one of, perhaps I think, the unique things about the pandemic, in that it has not been democratic in its effect on the world.
So true. So true.
So it seems that at least the people on this call, they are mostly working from home status. And so I wanted to ask, you have been on board with ADB in a pure 100% virtual remote status.
Yes.
What's been your experience joining a new organization in that way and setting up a team like you have so far?
Actually, at the beginning, I thought that would be extremely challenging, and I was a little anxious about it, but I found that there are many, many benefits to it. The first one is, when everybody's working from home, you have a much easier outreach to people, including managers, because it's much easier to just set up a meeting and have a call on Skype instead of being in an office, ask someone for a meeting and wait in line. So it's been much easier for me to reach out to a lot of people and get to work very quickly. The second is, there's in fact less bias in a way, because you are behind a screen. And when you meet people in person, they may also judge you by the way you dress and who you are, etc. And that actually has helped to really open more the conversation with people in a situation where everyone is really sort of struggling with this work from home situation. So on the other hand, of course, it takes much more energy to build trust, to communicate, and being able to understand those cultural issues at work or dynamics that could have seen when you were actually physically in the office. So it's not something that is not possible to overcome. It just takes much more awareness and a conscious effort to do that. Since then, I joined last year, but since then we have onboarded many new staff. And a lot of them also who are more used to remote work, virtual teams, and this technology have actually done well because they were already sort of versed with this kind of technology. For others who may not, actually, it has forced them to get into it. And so our digital transformation has actually been even more smoother than expected, because no one had any choice but get on Teams and get on Zoom and learn these things in general. So it's been quite positive for everyone, actually, not just for the newcomers, but for the entire organization.
I'm going to play devil's advocate and
yes.
To your comment about it taking more effort. I'm not sure, I haven't done the research, but I would be very interested to see at a generational difference whether that perception is, whether it is easier to onboard virtually or whether it's easier to onboard offline, meeting people face to face. I'm not sure what we could expect. Maybe this is a survey that we can run on our LinkedIn, where we do a lot of this kind of content. It would be interesting to see that perhaps maybe in fact having I mean, I certainly remember some of my onboarding, back in London, 15 years ago, and it was spread out over weeks and weeks because it involved scheduling to meet, VPs and other senior management who we can't do it all. Perhaps now that onboarding gets curtailed to the first few days, as it kind of should be. And maybe that's more impactful. Like I say, I'm really just kind of playing devil's advocate.
I'll be interested to learn more about this research if you're ever going to benchmark it.
I will. I'll put it as one for our team to look into. So I want to now address some of the questions which have been coming in on the Q&A.
Yes.
Thank you for those participants who have submitted questions so far. Please do keep sending them to us. The first one that I'd like to come to is, how have the priorities changed for HR professionals in terms of this year, and then moving forward? How do you see that going into next year?
I think this pandemic has definitely put more emphasis on talent management. Anything from onboarding, as we just discussed, all the way to mental health and well-being and performance management. It has, in my view, forced many HR functions to become much more strategic, much more lean in what they do as well, and focus on keeping the talent on board, motivated, engaged, and also avoid, potential sick leave or unethical lapses. So I think the HR function has really had this opportunity to show that it's more strategic. It can be strategic. It can be more of a partner, and be at the forefront of all organizations and firms around the world. I think many of them have actually taken up the challenge. I don't see, within the means that is also possible. But I saw that many HR people have actually stepped up and helped to, make sure the company or the organization has stayed together.
I think that's absolutely great. I mean, definitely as working in RDI, doing what we do, hearing that HR has been rising on the importance agenda, and that HR is getting an ever larger place at that management board level is really great to hear. I do think it was a slow burning trend, and to hear that it's accelerating, I think is really great. And that's also, I think, what we heard from our first session that we kicked off the conference with, which was focusing on startups and the areas of investment which are going into HR tech, which are the areas, and that whereas previously the dominant source of investment recipient in HR tech was all about talent acquisition, right? And just trying to acquire talent, whereas now the majority is actually more on talent management, as you say, is the focus, and also HRM. So that retention and employee wellness part, and I think that's was a part of a bigger trend around it being more of a employees market rather than employers market. I would say that is still not quite as strong in Korea. I do still think that a lot of interviews start with the candidate by them, the company asking them, so what can you do for our company, as opposed to what can we do for you, kind of turning it around. And the concept of two-way interview is still quite kind of nascent here in Korea. Let's go on to another question that we have here, which is really specifically asking about job roles, finance versus HR. So in corporate finance and accounting, there is the controller and the CFO, and they have different responsibilities within the functional division. Do you see this being the same for CHRO and head of HR, or is it different?
Well, I think it's a little bit different depending on the context of the company, because each company will have to see how it fits in its structure. But the CHRO for me is someone who sets the strategic level of the vision for the people, and the CHRO should sit at the table with management and be an executive of that company. An HR director would actually more oversee operations or implement or revise some policies. The CHRO should play that strategic role, that enabler. And at this time, many companies do not have this distinction. It's oftentimes the HR director who also sets the strategic vision and implements all the modalities for HR. And that is wrong. It is good to invest in a CHRO position. The CHRO does much more than just the transactional part of HR, and it's important to invest in that kind of position.
Absolutely. I think that as service sector economy becomes dominant, continues to grow, continues to be the largest employer of labor in developed economies, then absolutely that is an important part. If labor is your single greatest IP, then it is absolutely essential that the HR function is intrinsically placed at that C-level. I mean, I'm sure that the data is out there that shows companies that have CFO, CEO, CEO, COO, and yet no CHRO. I mean, I'm sure that that's very, very transparent. In terms of mobility, we've got a question about, do we see more mobility since the pandemic? And it's an interesting one to think about because in the one sense, travel is restricted. We cannot easily relocate to other countries for work. And even visa issuance is now very sensitive. Some countries, of course, are differentiating between nationals of their own country and foreign nationals. And so is it the case that because of that, there is less mobility, or in fact, because of all the things that we've mentioned before, such as rethinking and flexibility and more technology, that actually, like yourself, you are a part of that global mobility, being able to be in France, working for a company based in Manila, Philippines. And so is that, in fact, are we seeing more mobility, but it's virtual? I mean, at least in recruiting, I can speak on the Korea case, that Seoul really dominates Korea. When it comes to companies' locations, labor, the talent pool, government, investment, infrastructure, it's heavily concentrated in Seoul, with the exception of industrial manufacturing in the southern cluster. And so now, do people have to commute to downtown Seoul and be in the most expensive real estate in Yeouido or up near Gwanghwamun? Not anymore. They can be located anywhere. And so definitely from a recruiting perspective, it's possible to look at a much wider area as opposed to just focusing on commutable distance. Yes. What's your perspective on that?
No, it's true. I think I can speak for ADB, but also what I noticed when I was heading the HR function at the GGGI is that it is very difficult to attract certain talents to certain places. Let's be honest about it. And now we see that many of the work can be done from elsewhere. Some companies, some NGOs, especially the one in the US, have started to advertise positions where location is flexible. So there is a headquarter, it may be also very senior position, but it is not necessary to come to headquarters, to relocate to headquarters. And that money saved on relocating staff, employees, is actually maybe a higher salary that is more attractive. And then maybe some retreats or some paid travel for a certain time to the headquarters from time to time. So those companies who have adopted that model of recruitment, of talent acquisition to some extent, have actually benefited from getting a wider pool of talent and a better retention rate. And I think this is what we're seeing now, that at least for ADB, more than 60% of our international staff are located outside of Manila, Manila being their duty station. They perform well, and they may benefit from some travel to Manila from time to time, but very often they actually travel to other duty stations for their work. So they may go to Azerbaijan or Afghanistan or Pakistan or Bangladesh or Asia and Pacific. So they don't necessarily need to be based in Manila. And I think it's really clear today that in order to keep, attract and retain the right talents, it may not be necessary any longer to require them to move to Manila to work for ADB. And that's also the observation that other organizations have already taken so far. So it is for the HR manager, for the HR function to convince management to some extent that maybe certain positions do not require your employees to travel and stay at a certain duty station. And it's not even not just the country, but a certain even geographical zone, but and make a business case for it, for talent acquisition, for saving money, for retention at the end.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you kind of encapsulated it in one word earlier on, which is flexibility. And flexibility affords higher levels of satisfaction, which raises engagement, which raises performance, which raises retention, which further comes around again to even higher motivations, and so the positive feedback loop continues. We've got a question about data analytics. Do you see data analytics playing a more important role in talent management? Should HR professionals upskill themselves in knowing how to work more with data and insight?
Oh, absolutely. It's one of my favorite topics, is data analytics for everything, but particularly from your recruitment, your employee experience, all the way even to separation when people leave your organization. There is a lot of information that can be set up through very performant system nowadays, and they give you a lot of information for you to have targeted action. So I personally have implemented more analytics into our recruitment, but also looking at our mobility of staff and the training, because also training is the evaluation of what you do is equally important to understand what the impact is. And data analytics, if it's not really embedded at the very beginning, you're going to continue doing training that may not be as effective as you hope. And you may not be able to also target the right people or the right actions to be taken. So analytics is absolutely a key skills to have for HR, but also for all managers, I would say, in order to be able to work in an agile way and using your resources very effectively.
Absolutely. So I guess the title of this was Global HR. So I want to return to that kind of key title, looking at that very high level macro type of view. If there was one thing that organizations could do to improve their HR, one quick win, some people call it low-hanging fruit, the thing which is going to, with a minimum amount of effort, have a big impact. What do you think is that number one thing that could make the biggest positive impact?
in my view, and based on my 15 years of experience going around different organizations, for me, the one thing that needs to really is key is performance management. That's across the public and the private sector, because performance management is really this sort of needle that can be made to change the way people work together, the way they collaborate. And then if people collaborate well, there's more innovation, there's a better employee experience, there's better retention, there's better mobility. So performance management, in my view, is a key element of how people work together. And very often what I find is that performance management is still very transactional. Is at least in the public sector, is still very transactional, is doesn't get inputs from peers, from clients. It's maybe not supported by digital tools. So having a very modern approach to performance management in your firm, in your organization, is probably the key to a very agile, motivated talent pool in your organization, and a much better delivery, whether it's on the business side or as an organization in the public sector.
I couldn't agree more. I think, you know, you're preaching to the choir in terms of me as an absolute true believer in the power of performance management when it comes to you know, HR, whether it's from the company perspective or the employee perspective. I think it's definitely beneficial for all. I think that is pretty much most of the questions that we have to go right now. I wanted to bring in Eric into the close of this discussion, since he was moderating one of our earlier sessions as well. Welcome back, Eric. Was there anything that came out of the previous sessions that you felt was a kind of a key topic or theme that you would like to discuss or ask to Christel?
Yeah, I think definitely there's one particular question from the previous session just before this one in relation to diversity and inclusion in the workplace. I think one of the participants asked a very good question, specifically when it comes to gender diversity and inclusion. What should a organization or what should HR be doing to take a more proactive role in promoting gender equality, diversity and also inclusion, particularly when it comes to female leadership? I think that was the question being asked.
Thank you. Yeah, so we often talk about the glass ceiling for women and sort of so-called minorities. I think for each company or organization, particularly on this call, it is to really understand what it means, first of all, in the organization or the company. What is a minority? What do we refer by gender inclusiveness? How do we recognize other type of population in the company? So that's defining those terms is extremely important in order to think about what actions could be taken. And that could be also very different whether you're a Korean-based company with an American headquarter, or it can be very different from a company based in Europe with a headquarter in Korea. So have that really thorough conversation with your management, with staff on defining what it means for your company. And then the second issue is we talk a lot about the glass ceiling as if there's only one way of going up, but there's also a lot of what we call the glass labyrinth. So there is like a different path at a horizontal level that are barriers for these groups to actually reach the glass ceiling and go forward. So how do you actually create opportunities for people, not necessarily at the higher level up, but within the organization to be connected, to be sponsored, to have exposure, and even beyond just recruiting a more diverse, helping enabling that population internally to navigate the complexity of the company, of the organization, with more opportunities. Some questions are always around, do you need to have a sort of affirmative action type of a policy, meaning a proactive policy to have some numbers and to be able to diversify your group. That is also a very important question to discuss with your management, because there's pros and cons. The pros is indeed you need sometimes to push for more diversity in the company. But the cons is sometimes if the population is not well prepared, it may also turn into resentment, passive aggressiveness, or that the fact that people are not there based on merit. So the narrative you have around your policy is extremely important. You're not promoting women because we need more women in senior positions, but because they're qualified. You are not promoting more diversity because you just need to fill in some regulation or some government obligation, but because you want to promote innovation, collaboration, and that diverse group is good for your company. So that would be my third advice to, if you want to have affirmative action, it may be good, but you also really need to be prepared for maybe the negative side of it. And there are ways of doing that, but it's to be prepared for it.
I think you're absolutely right. You cannot push through any kind of policy or rules without having a dialogue first to really establish the needs in the beginning and like why we're doing all this. And also you have to hear from the other side, because I think another session in relation to labor law, I think Anthony Chang raised a really good point. So the Korean government's intention is to make sure that more employees are being taken care of by giving them long-term contract. However, the policy kicked in, and then the previous people who worked so hard to get those contracts have the exact kind of resentment that you just talked about. Like he talked about, I had to work so hard and now click, they just got it. So now I'm not happy with this positive change, even though it's a complete positive change, but they felt because there was not a dialogue, there was not a lot of engagement before with the stakeholders and asking like, how do you feel about this change?
Yeah.
Do you know why we have to do this? This is also good for you and good for us. So I think you raise a really good point that you can't, policy has to be there, but how you implement them will have a big difference when it comes to success or failure.
That's right. Yeah.
And Christel, maybe can you add a little bit about your personal experience when it comes to that? Because you know, being the head of HR at the Global Green Growth Institute in Korea, you know, Korea unfortunately is top of the Economist ranking of glass ceiling. Do you want to maybe share some of how you yourself have been able to you know, be successful, and your position, and you know, how maybe advice for others who could want to follow in your footsteps?
Yes. So the first thing we did is really to embed the value of diversity into our values as an organization. That was the first thing. And I think when you make it very clear, explicit, this is who we are. We want more diversity because it's good for our organization. We are an international organization. Diversity is key. It's a good starting point to engage in conversation with managers who are hiring, you know, for diversity. That's the first step, the value-based approach. The second is to train managers and especially the hiring managers to try to unlock some biases in the way they recruit. So it can start at the way the type of questions we ask during the interview, maybe even the modality of the interview, whether it's a face-to-face or it is a remote interview, and then some tolerance around the language barriers. Because if you have a native English speaker, we know that they may be more comfortable and more confident in an interview, and obviously it can lead to some biases, whereas perhaps a woman who might not be that confident, but she's probably extremely good, but that may not show. So having a series of different interviews or ability to engage with the candidates and go beyond maybe some initial biases that we all have, it actually will help. That's what we did. We trained managers, we worked with staff to try to unlock those biases and making sure the interview are as easy as possible for the candidates to shine at the interview. Then the third action we took is talent management. The training, we targeted emerging leaders. We focused on training this next generation of leaders in GDGI so that they understand all those how to implement more diversity, how to enable that diversity. And the talent management has been extremely key for changing the culture of GDGI, in that respect. So that would be my three: value-based, hiring for against bias, and training the future leaders of your organization.
I'm just so happy that you put it like that, because that is exactly the same theme that has resonated throughout this conference from the very start, in terms of technology helping to reduce bias, through to a more engaged management process when it comes to talent acquisition, through to the regulation which has helped to promote more diversity. And then we talked in the last session literally about language diversity, and your great point about English native speakers being more confident and therefore on paper can perform better. And I think that is absolutely the kind of the key point. And it's great to be able to wrap up on that note of our People Matters. Thank you so much for being a guest with us in this final session. It's been 5 sessions that we have run throughout today, but I feel that there are so many great topics and agendas that we didn't get to talk about today and discuss. And so I'm sure that we will do our best efforts to run another People Matters in the near future, and hopefully we can have also great and experienced global guests like yourself again. So thank you very much, Christel.
Thank you for having me, Gordon, Eric, the team. And if the participants want to connect with me on LinkedIn, they're most welcome to do so, and we can also continue the conversation. But thanks for having me again today.
Thank you. And to everybody who is on this session, thank you for joining. We really appreciate you being a part of this discussion and asking the questions that are important to you. That's how, with your feedback, that we can hope to deliver even more value to you. We do have a very short participant survey as an exit survey, just for you to fill out as you exit. And it would be really appreciated if you could go ahead and do that. Beyond that, I really hope that for those of you who have just come across RDI for the first time through today's People Matters conference, that you can look us up on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the area where we are probably the most active as an HR company and a people-based company. That is where we are putting a lot of our great content, sharing our events, and also having our talent forum as well. So even job opportunities that can be obtained through our LinkedIn. So once again, thank you to everyone who's been involved in the organization of this event, and to the participants and to all the guests. Thank you so much.